Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to aisling.stories. I am Akansha, and in today's video we are going to talk about 5 podcasts that I think everyone should listen to. Majority of the podcasts that I listen to are based on lifestyle changes and positive mindset habits, so I think most of the podcasts cater to those needs. So without any further delay, let's get started. The first podcast on the list is the Self-Love Fix by Beatrice. Now I started listening to this podcast I think last year or last to last year, and I have been hooked since then. बीच में ना तो ऐसा रिचुअल हो गया था कि आई यूज टू लिसन टू एटलीस्ट वन ऑफ हर एपिसोड्स एंड देन आई यूज टू गो टू स्लीप. एंड उसकी वॉइस यार काफ़ी अच्छी है, मतलब इट्स वेरी कन्विंसिंग, वेरी इजी फ्लोइंग. हर पॉडकास्ट आर लाइक ऐसा लगेगा कि आप फ्रेंड से बात कर रहे हो. सो आई रियली इन्जॉय हर पॉडकास्ट फॉर दैट रीजन. एंड प्लस द एवरेज लेंथ जो होती है पूरे पॉडकास्ट सेशन की, दैट इज अराउंड 22 मिनट्स और एट मैक्स 30 मिनट्स, नॉट मोर देन दैट. सो बिकॉज ऑफ दिस आपका मतलब क्योंकि एवरेज लेंथ इतना ही है ना, तो यू कैन ईजिली लाइक इंक्लूड इट इन बिटवीन योर like work slots, or maybe you're driving, then you can listen to that podcast. So basically the length I really like because 20-30 minutes is easy to manage. And the major topics that she covers are, number one, obviously self-love, the topic on which the entire name of the podcast is based. So she talks about how you can include self-love in your life, what are the basic things that you should do in order to make sure that you are loving yourself more. And then she also talks about positive mindset, then she also talks about mindfulness, basic good habits, lifestyle changes, and all of that stuff. So a really good podcast. Highly recommend you to check that one out. Number 2 podcast that I have to mention is Voice with Variku. So this is a podcast that is started by Ankur Variku. I already know that you guys must have been knowing Ankur Warikoo by now. I think the main reason that I listen to his podcast are two. Number one, his voice. Like, I don't know, there's some fatherly, caring vibe that I get from Ankur Warikoo, and because of which I keep listening to his podcast. वैसे तो Instagram reels और YouTube videos में भी voice दिखती ही है, सुनाई देती ही है, but I don't know, there's something about podcast that I actually like. And the second main reason is the average length of his podcast. So basically सारे podcast ना already 6 या 12 minutes से ज़्यादा के नहीं होते हैं. So it's very easy to like listen to those podcast on the go. अगर आपके कोई वर्किंग स्लॉट्स के बीच में अगर आपको पॉडकास्ट सुनना है, या फिर आप कुछ ब्रेक ले रहे हो, समझ नहीं आ रहा क्या करना है, आप कपड़े वगैरह फोल्ड कर रहे हो, बर्तन वगैरह धो रहे हो, यू जस्ट नीड अ गुड पॉडकास्ट दैट यू शुड लिसन टू इन दो 6 to 12 minutes, then I think Ankur Wariko's podcast is the one that I would recommend. Next podcast on the list is The School of Greatness. Now I listen to this podcast whenever I have time, because average length of this podcast is around 1 to 1:30 hours, या फिर 2 घंटे के भी कुछ कुछ एपिसोड्स होते हैं. सो यू नीड टाइम वेन एवर यू आर लिसनिंग टू दिस पॉडकास्ट, एंड ऑल ऑफ दीज एपिसोड्स आर वेरी इन्फॉर्मेटिव. लाइक लिटरली व्हेन यू बी लिसनिंग टू दिस पॉडकास्ट ना, तो आपको लगेगा ना कि ये भी नोट कर लेती हूँ, ये भी नोट कर लेती हूँ, ये भी नोट कर लेती हूँ, बिकॉज everything is so informative, and the guest list is awesome. Like literally the people that come to his podcast are people, they know stuff, they know what they are talking about. So you need to make sure that whenever you are listening to this podcast, you know that you have time, and you know that you are observing everything that you are listening to. So this is a podcast that I usually go to whenever I have time in my hand, whenever I know that I will be able to do justice to what I would be listening to. So that's when I usually go to this podcast. But I highly recommend you to check this one out as well. Very informative and very intriguing. The topics are really nice, so I highly recommend you to check this one out as well. I have saved the best for the last. So the final podcast that I have to mention is The Lavender Lifestyle by Eileen. Now I have a special place for this podcast because this is the first podcast that I ever listened to, and in fact I have re-listened to all of her episodes. बीच में ये podcast बंद हो गया था, and recently she has restarted her podcast. And जब तक वो बंद था ना, तब तक I was kind of re-listening to all of her previous episodes, and it is very good. Like her voice is something that I think उसकी ना आवाज़ बनी ही meditation और podcast इन सब के लिए, because it's so soothing, so calming. And जब भी मुझे ऐसा लगता है ना कि I need something, जब मैं पेंट वगैरह कर रही हूँ, I need something in the background, जब मैं कॉफ़ी वगैरह पी रही हूँ, I need something to listen to, then this is the podcast that I go to. It's very convincing, very calming, very soothing, and everything that she talks about, the guest list is awesome. So then people that she calls know about stuff. So basic topics that she covers are astrology. She also talks about healing. She also talks about positive lifestyle changes, mindfulness, to be in a present moment, book reviews, and all of that stuff. So basically a good podcast that you should listen to. Highly recommend you check that one out as well. These were the podcasts that I listen to a lot, and I wanted to mention them in my video. So let me know in the comments below if you have already listened to any of these podcasts and what are your views on it. This deserves much more appreciation. YouTube वगैरह पे काफ़ी ज़्यादा appreciation already है, but podcast अभी इतना ज़्यादा famous नहीं हुआ है. People are there who are creating content on podcast, but there are not as many people who are listening to those podcasts. So I highly recommend you to explore those podcasts. There's so much information on there. So give it a shot, give it a listen, and let me know in the comments below how you like it. And that was it for this video. I hope you liked it, and if you did, then please like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I post videos every single Tuesday and Saturday, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye. नहीं हो पा रहा, कांचा, जस्ट फोकस फोकस फोकस। बहुत गर्मी है यार।